The Galactic Academy's lecture hall buzzed with the typical pre-class chatter of 200 alien students. Jessica sat alone in the back row, her human frame looking almost fragile compared to the towering Krillians, the armored Vexthor, and the crystalline Zephyrians that surrounded her. She kept her eyes down, pretending to review her datapad while the whispers continued. "Look at the human," hissed a Krillian student to his companion. "How did something so weak even get accepted here?" "I heard they have to sleep for 8 hours every day," another added with a clicking laugh. 8 hours? Can you imagine being that inefficient? Jessica's fingers tightened around her datapad, but she said nothing. This wasn't new. It had been 3 months since humanity had been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Coalition, and she was one of only 5 humans enrolled in the prestigious academy. Every day brought new mockery, new reminders that Earth was considered a backwater planet, and humans were viewed as the weakest species to ever reach the stars. The door to the lecture hall slid open, and James walked in. Another human, though unlike Jessica, he seemed unbothered by the stares. He was part of the military liaison program, dressed in the simple gray uniform of Earth's United Defense Force. He wasn't a student. He was today's guest lecturer. Jessica straightened slightly in her seat, curious despite herself. Professor Velthar, a distinguished Zephyrian whose crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns, gestured for silence. "Students, today we have a special presentation on military tactics and survival strategies. This is Commander James Harrison of Earth's military forces." The room erupted in barely suppressed laughter. A human? Teaching military tactics? The Vexthor, whose species had conquered 17 star systems, found this particularly amusing. James stood at the podium, seemingly unaffected by the reception. "Thank you, Professor," he said calmly. "I understand many of you find humanity's presence here amusing. After all, we're not the strongest, not the fastest, and certainly not the most technologically advanced species in this room." "That's an understatement," someone muttered loud enough to be heard. James smiled slightly. "You're right. Let me tell you what humans are. We evolved on a death world. Yes, Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world by your own galactic survey standards. Our planet has more predators per square kilometer than any inhabited world in known space. Our weather systems regularly produce storms that would be classified as planetary emergencies on most coalition worlds. Earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis. We built our civilizations despite them all." A few students shifted uncomfortably, but most still looked skeptical. "We're persistence hunters," James continued. "Do you know what that means? It means we don't run fast, but we never stop running. On Earth, humans used to hunt animals by simply following them. For days without stopping, we'd track a deer or antelope until it literally collapsed from exhaustion, and then we'd kill it. We didn't need to be faster or stronger. We just needed to be relentless." The room had grown quieter now. "You mock Jessica for being here," James said, his voice hardening slightly as he gestured toward the back row. Jessica felt her face flush as every eye turned to her. "You see weakness. Let me tell you what I see. I see a young woman who scored in the top percentile of every entrance exam, despite coming from a species that only achieved faster-than-light travel 3 years ago. I see someone who works 3 times as hard as most of you because she refuses to be left behind." He tapped his datapad, and a holographic display materialized above the podium. "But let me tell you a story about humans that might change your perspective. 50 years ago, before we had any contact with the Coalition, one of our spacecraft malfunctioned during a mission to our moon. 3 astronauts were trapped in a damaged capsule, 380,000 kilometers from Earth, with no way to get home. They had maybe 4 days of oxygen left. The display showed images of the primitive spacecraft, held together with what looked like metal sheets and rivets. By your standards, this technology is laughably obsolete. But do you know what humans did? Every scientist, engineer, and technician on Earth stopped what they were doing and worked on bringing those 3 people home. They didn't sleep. They barely ate. They worked for 4 days straight, inventing solutions with materials that were never designed for space travel. They used duct tape, an adhesive fabric material, to jury-rig carbon dioxide filters. They calculated trajectories using slide rules because their computers weren't powerful enough. James's voice grew intense. "And they brought those astronauts home, against impossible odds with primitive technology, powered by nothing but human stubbornness and the absolute refusal to leave their people behind. The lecture hall was completely silent now. That's what humans are, James said quietly. We're the species that looked at the stars from a death world and decided we belonged there. We're the species that splits atoms to generate power, and went to our moon before we even had portable computers. We do more with less than any species in this galaxy, because we've never had the luxury of giving up. He looked directly at the Krillian who had mocked Jessica earlier. You have natural armor plating and can survive in vacuum for short periods. That's impressive. But your species didn't develop spaceflight until you'd been unified for 1,000 years. Humans went from our first powered flight to landing on our moon in 66 years. We went from splitting the atom to controlling fusion in less than a century. Why? Because we had to. Because our world tried to kill us every single day. And we learned that the only way to survive was to adapt faster than anything else. Professor Velthar's crystalline body pulsed with what Jessica had learned was their species' equivalent of approval. Commander Harrison makes an excellent point. Humanity's advancement curve is unprecedented in galactic history. James nodded. So yes, laugh at Jessica for needing 8 hours of sleep. Mock us for being weak and slow. But remember this. We're the species that conquered a death world, reached the stars with primitive technology, and refused to quit even when the universe itself seemed determined to stop us. That's not weakness. That's the most dangerous kind of strength there is. He paused, letting his words sink in. Humanity doesn't give up. Ever. And that should terrify you far more than any physical strength or natural armor ever could. The lecture hall remained silent as James concluded his presentation. As the class filed out, several students approached Jessica, not with mockery this time, but with questions and, surprisingly, respect. Jessica caught James's eye as she left, and he gave her a small nod. She squared her shoulders and walked a little taller. She was human, and she was done apologizing for it.